as promised in the previous video, this video is going to be about conditions, and we'll talk about the different ways that we can essentially specify different conditions in Python. So conditions, there's three conditions that we need to talk about. There's if, elif, and else. Those are the three keywords that we can use to specify different conditions. I'm going to be talking about how we can use those and how we can really understand them in this video. Okay, that's just what we're going to be doing. And we'll also be doing a bunch of examples. Alright, so let's talk about what if statements are. Before we get into the programming, let's just talk about what an if statement is. Okay, so when you live your life, you have many different things that you do, and you make a bunch of decisions. This is very important because based on certain conditions, you make certain decisions. Let me give you an example. If the milk that you have in your house is running low, you choose to go ahead and make the decision to buy milk. But this is only if the milk is running low. Otherwise, if the milk wasn't running low, if you have a lot of milk and your fridge is filled with milk, then you wouldn't buy more milk because of the fact that it would be too much. You don't need that much. So that is a condition. If the milk is low, then something happens. That is the essence of what an if statement is and what a conditional is. It's basically talking about a condition. If something is true, something else will be true. We'll evaluate. And in programming, that's the same idea. If a condition evaluates to true, a bunch of statements will be evaluated. Let me go over an example. If, we'll keep the milk example, so let me create a variable called quantity milk. Now let's just say that quantity milk is 3, and I'm not going to talk about what units. Let's just say that 3 something, 3 units, whatever. Now we have our if statement here. If quantity milk is less than or equal to 2, print get milk. Now I know I just kind of avoided talking about this, the way this is structured, and I'll talk about that right now. So if quantity of milk is less than or equal to 2, so if is our keyword, and then what we specify after that is the condition. So keyword, condition, which is quantity of milk is less than or equal to 2, then we specify a colon. We have to include this, and then inside of this statement we have all of our statements that will be evaluated as a result of this condition being true. If it's false, then none of these will be evaluated and we will move on. How do we know though that these statements are inside of this if condition? How do we know that they're not just a part of the program? That is where indentation matters. Indentation matters a lot in Python, and I think that's a great thing, because in some other programming languages like Java, you don't really necessarily need indentation, because the way that it's specified, if it's inside of an if condition or not, is basically based on using curly braces like this. And so that's why you don't really necessarily need to worry about indentation, but it's just great practice to do so. Think about a program with no indentation whatsoever. It would be just messy. It would be difficult for the programmer to read, even for yourself. If you're getting back to the program in like 10 years, that's a lot of time. But for example, even in a week, it's very hard for you to look back and just determine sort of what this program is doing if it's not properly if it doesn't follow proper indentation rules. And so these indentation rules are not written anywhere in like other programming languages, but they are very important. But in Python, you have to indent, because that's how you specify that this condition, this statement is going to be evaluated as a result of this if condition evaluating to true. So indentation matters a whole lot, otherwise your program will not work. So let's go ahead and evaluate. Just to let me try that again. Let's see here. Oh yeah, just to sorry about that. There is no output here because quantity milk is equal to 3, and quantity milk is not less than or equal to 2. 3 is not less than or equal to 2, and so there's nothing evaluated. We're skipping the statement and we're going on, but there's nothing left, so the program ends. Now, if we were to say if quantity milk is less than or equal to 4, get milk, then running it would get us get milk. That's as easy as that. Okay, now let's go into an else statement and elif statements. An else statement is basically if this is not true, then do something else. So if quantity milk is less than or equal to 4, get milk. Else, and else is talking about the fact that it's not going to be less than or equal to 4. It's going to be, in other words, greater than 4. So in the case that it's greater than 4, we have a greater quantity of milk, we will just print we got enough milk at the moment. So we got enough milk at the moment, so we do not have to print. We don't have to print we get milk because we have enough milk. So if I were to change this guy to like 20, we have a lot of milk. We got enough milk at the moment. Now you might be saying, what if I want to add more conditions? For example, I know that if it's less than or equal to 4, I will get milk. But if it's going to be greater than 4, we got enough milk. But what about everything in between? That's a good question. We can specify that as well. How do we specify that? Well, that's where our elif conditions come into existence. So if we have an elif statement is basically used for us to specify the conditions in between. So elif also stands for else if, and else if, think about that logically. If something is true, evaluate this, but it's not true, then else, it means it's not true. If this is true, then evaluate this. If that's not also true, then we have another else, elif, which is going to be else, which means the other one's not true. And so now we're checking this condition, and we can keep on going like that until the else where none of the other ones are true. That's a lot of speaking. I'll go over this example right now. So elif quantity milk is, now let's say that I wanted to go from 4 to 5, right? If it's between 4 and 5, how can I do that? You don't have to specify that here. What you only do is the following. If quantity milk is less than or equal to 5, print milk is running low. Okay, how does this work? So if quantity milk is less than or equal to 4, get milk. That is not going to be true. So let's just say this is 5. So let's just say this is 5 for example purposes. That is not going to be true, and so we won't get milk. Then what the program does is it goes to the next condition, and this is an elif. Basically when this is evaluated is if the previous one is not true, hence the else, we will get into this statement and we will check its condition. Quantity milk is that less than or equal to 5? Indeed it is. And so we will go ahead and print milk is running low. If this weren't true, so if we had like 6, then even this isn't true, and then we'd go to else. So if none of these are true, this will come into play and we will print out we got enough milk at the moment. That's essentially how it works. It goes down like a waterfall from top to bottom. And we can add more and more conditions. If quantity milk is less than or equal to 2, I should say 6.251. We can specify another condition. It can keep on going. And that's the beauty of these conditions. That's essentially when they're used. So I hope that made sense. So if it's 6, let me go ahead and run. It will be we got enough milk at the moment. But if it's 5, we will get milk is running low, which means that we might need to get milk soon. So maybe when you're going to the grocery store, go get milk, even though we have enough, but it's running low. If it's 4, we just gotta go get milk. It's not gonna be enough. We gotta go get milk. All right, I hope that explanation was good enough. I feel like I kind of made some slight over explanations in between that weren't necessary, but just to kind of get things more solid, I will do another example. This example is going to be a classic example of grades. So the grades example is thinking about if we have a grading system such that 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to a 90 is a B, 70 to an 80 is a C, and 60 to a 70 is a D, and below that would be an F. How do we determine, based on the grade that we have, what grade, or based on the percentage that we have, what grade the student must receive? Well, we can determine that using an if, elif, else block of code. So let's just say that percentage is equal to 45%. This is a score of it on a test, for example. If we start with the if percentage, and I'd encourage you actually to start first. If you understood the directions, go ahead and start. Basically, we're trying to build a program that determines based on the percentage which grade the student will receive using conditionals. Let me actually type that out so you can pause the video. Use conditionals to build a program that will determine the grade or a grade a student receives based on their percentage. This is very simple instructions. You can go ahead and do that now. Pause the video. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video. If you haven't, that's fine. Let's get going. If percentage is greater than or equal to 90, print A. That's a great grade. Now that's if the percentage is greater than or equal to 90. But what if it isn't? What if it's between 80 and 90? You don't need to specify another if condition where if percentage is between 80 and 90, because you can use an elif condition. Because if percentage is greater than or equal to 90, it's going to have to print A. But if it's greater than 80, greater than or equal to 80, technically that is still greater than or equal to technically greater than or equal to 80 would be essentially valid for a percentage, say for example 91. Technically, if we have an elif percentage is greater than or equal to 80, print B. You might be thinking, well, if I have a percentage of say 91, technically this is also true, but we won't even get to this place if this first one was true. That's what I wanted to kind of emphasize. Even though technically this is true, we won't even get to it since this becomes true. And so this essentially is saying that if it's greater than or equal to 80, but less than 90. So because of the fact that we have an elif. So that's the beauty of an elif. Anyway, let's keep going with this code. Otherwise this video is going to be too long. We have an elif percentage is greater than or equal to 70. Print C. And then finally, else, which actually no, we have more. So let me do elif percentage is greater than or equal to 60. Print D. And finally else, which is if all of these are false, then just print F. It's as simple as that. If percentage is greater than or equal to 90, we'll get an A. If percentage is elif, which means that percentage wasn't greater than or equal to 90, but it is greater than or equal to 80, then we'll get a B. If it's greater than or equal to 80, but not, if it wasn't greater than or equal to 80, but greater than or equal to 70, print C. If it wasn't greater than or equal to 70, but greater than or equal to 60, print D. And if it wasn't any of these, just print F. So it's going to go down like a waterfall. So let's go ahead and experiment. If I have a 45%, that's clearly an F. That's what we get. If we have a 90%, we should always try the kind of the border examples because they can mess up, but we get an A because a 90 is an A. We're not going to specify A plus and A minus, all of that. It's going to overly complicate for no reason because we're just trying to talk about the conditionals. If we have an 85, this should be a B. If we have a 75, this should be a C. If we have a 70, it should be a C. If we have a 68, it should be a D. If we have a 10, it should be an F. If we even have a negative 20, it should still be an F. So technically, negatives shouldn't be inputted. If we have a negative, it should just kind of stop and shouldn't do anything. But we can also actually worry about that if we choose to. But I will actually go ahead and not do that right now. Let's just do some more test cases. Percentage, if that's, for example, I don't know, let's see, 60, it should be a D, and so on. You can go ahead and test way more examples. Now, you know what? I was thinking, let me go ahead and actually include the negative example. Why not? Seems like it's a good challenge. You do that now. I'm going to go specify that in the instructions. Make sure negatives aren't allowed. You do that now, and I will be doing that after you do so. Alright, hopefully you paused the video. Let's get started with the negative checker. So let's say percentage was -1. Obviously this is not a valid percentage, so we have to check. If percentage is less than 0, it can be 0, but it can't be less than 0. Print no. That is invalid. Now, is this going to work? Well, let's see. Let me go ahead and run our program. It says no, this is invalid, but then after that it goes down and prints out F. That shouldn't be happening because we just want it to print this, and we don't even want to print F. So clearly this is not the way to go. There is another way though. If percentage is greater than or equal to 0, that's when we want to even enter all of this. Otherwise, we don't even want to worry about it. If it's less than 0, then we just want to ignore it. So that's why we have to essentially do an if inside of an if. Basically a conditional inside of a conditional. That's what we have to do here. So if percentage is greater than or equal to 0, that's only when we want all of this to start evaluating and checking. So we'll just indent this, and then else, which is the case there, percentage is not greater than or equal to 0, and then in which percentage is less than 0, we just print out whatever we had here. So I'm just going to copy all of this, and so we don't even need all of this. This is actually much better. Let me go ahead and check. No, this is invalid. So basically what we did is, if percentage is greater than or equal to 0, that's only when we'll even check this and print out A, B, C, and C, D, or F accordingly. But if it isn't, then we'll just say that it's not valid. That's what's doing. So if we have like 89 as our percentage, that's a B. But if we have negative 89, that is obviously not valid, and so it is not valid. And so that's the video. I want to end with an A. That's the video. Quite a long video, but I hope that my explanations and my examples were helpful to you. We had the milk example, we had the grades example, and all of these examples are crucial to your mastery and your understanding of this topic. So what now? Well, I just encourage you to play around. That's the best way to learn programming. So what I'd encourage you to do is just try to think about an example where conditionals are useful, and also an example where you can use conditionals in addition to the things that you've already learned. Like this example right here, we have data storage and use, we have print statements, and we have conditionals. Think about more examples like this one, and just work on them on your own. I'll tell you that when you do these examples on your own, you will grow a lot more than just watching someone do the examples. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next video, we will get into loops. It's a very different idea, but it's not hard. We'll start with the while loop in the next video, and then after that we'll do the for loop, and that's how this is going to go. So I hope that you found this video helpful.